Exactly. And I think of it more as like orbits, and also sometimes they're sexual relationships and sometimes like they move in and out maybe of being sexual. So, I've had people orbit through my life in very close orbit where I see them a lot, a much further orbit. Oh, maybe I see them once every 6 months or a year, but in some way inside of my nervous system now, I love them all. And they're here with me, and I feel safe and securely attached to those people as friends, as lovers, as partners, as just people who I really respect and care about and who I have long-term connection with. And it's been much more sustainable to me than this kind of grasping experience of what I call primary possessive partnership.
Welcome to Normalizing Non-Monogamy, the podcast where we interview incredible people from all over the world to hear their personal journeys of self-discovery through the lenses of love, sex, and relationships.
Our mission is to show people that they're not alone and to inspire them to embrace their true selves so that together we can open minds and live authentically without shame.
We believe everyone's story is powerful and beautiful, yet it's important to remember that everyone does life a little bit differently and that the views and opinions expressed by our guests do not necessarily reflect our own.
Additionally, we aren't doctors. Please consult a medical professional for anything regarding your health that you might learn about on the show. Enjoy!
Welcome to episode 391. We're Finn and Emma, and today we have a fantastic conversation with Celeste as she takes us through her beautiful relationship journey. As you'll hear, Celeste brings a lot of laughter and joy to the interview today, and we absolutely love it.
Yeah, we also love how she talks about trauma empowerment and embracing our histories and challenges as we work with them to find relationship structures that work for us. And spoiler alert, this was a big part of her journey as well. And we're so grateful to Celeste for coming on and sharing so vulnerably with us as she digs into how she's done this work and what it's looked like for her. So thank you, Celeste, for coming on and sharing.
Celeste is also one of the co-founders of the Somatica Institute, which is a sex and relationship coaching training program. She talks a lot more about it in the interview.
Yeah, we definitely dig into it. And I share a little bit more about my experience in going through this program as well. But I will just share up front here that even though I'm not doing coaching after going through this program, I got a ton out of this program for myself that I use in my partnership with Emma and even in my friendships and family relationships. So perhaps you're not looking to become a coach, but you just want to get some practice and to learn some new skills. This is a great opportunity. And maybe you're not looking to dive into something this extensive. Somatic has also started offering smaller courses and programs that anybody can take without going through this program. We've got links in the show notes where you can check all of that out. And Celeste and Daniel have also offered a $20 discount on one of the programs that they've got offered right now. So there is a link in the show notes as well to save that $20. So please check out the links in the show notes to learn more about Somatica. And one more time, a huge thank you to Celeste for coming on, for sharing your story, and for all of the incredible work you do.
For anyone who's a premium subscriber, we'll jump into the interview with Celeste now. And for anyone else, we do have a couple of announcements. First up, if you're not familiar with the premium subscription, it's a way to skip these announcements up front, but don't worry, we still share important dates of upcoming events in the outro. To sign up for the premium subscription, go over to our website, normalizingnonmonogamy.com, scroll down on the homepage, and you can sign up right there for as little as $4 a month.
And next up, we want to tell you all a little bit about our community. You probably hear us talk about this every week.
Every week.
And that's because we absolutely love it. And we want to make sure you know that we have a community full of over 300 people who come together to socialize and support one another using an app that we host our community on called Mighty Networks. We also host monthly community calls on Zoom, and we've recently started hosting monthly virtual workshops where we bring in world-class facilitators from around the world to host amazing workshops on a wide array of different relationship topics. Our next one is coming up actually tomorrow.
May 8th.
May 8th. It is called Befriending Jealousy, and we've got Jolie Hamilton coming in. Jolie is incredible. She's been on the podcast before. There are links in the show notes. So please go check that out. And maybe if you're like, well, what other workshops have you got coming?
Oh, there's a list.
There's a whole list. There's a whole page on our website. There's a link in the show notes for that as well. And if by chance you're looking and you missed one from the past, our community members also have access to the recording. So please come check it out. You get all of this included for just $8 a month, and we'd love to have you join us.
We also host in-person gatherings for community twice a year, and we just got back from our recent community retreat in Atlanta. It was incredible. Thank you so much to everyone who joined us. We loved being in person person with so many of you. It was such an incredible weekend. And our next in-person gathering is October 3rd to the 5th in the San Francisco Bay Area. You can find out more information on our website.
Yeah, to find out everything you need to know about our community, about the workshops, about the in-person events, all of it, you can head over to normalizingnonmonogamy.com, click on the community tab, and you'll find all of the information there.
And if you don't want to wait until October to be together in person, Finn and I will be attending 2 retreats coming up at the end of May and early June. The first is the Bonobo Retreat, May 23rd to the 26th in Northern California. You can go listen to episode 386 with Danny, where we talk a lot about this retreat. Also in June, we're attending the Soul Play Festival, June 12th to the 15th, also in Northern California. And you can go listen to episode 387 with Holly to learn more.
Yeah, links to more information about both of these retreats will be in the show notes over at normalizingnonmonogamy.com. Again, these are not our retreats. They are other community retreats that we're super excited to be at, and we're presenting 2 different workshops at.
We are.
So we'd love to have you come join us.
And if you can't make it out to California, we also do get together every month for a virtual event. We have our virtual speedfriending event. Our next one is coming up very soon. It is May 16th. You can sign up over on our website, click on the banner at the top of the page, or it's listed under the events tab. These virtual speedfriending events are a great way to meet like-minded people. We bring you all together in Zoom, give you a question, break you out into Zoom breakout rooms. You talk about that question for 6 minutes, and then we bring you back, scramble the rooms, and rinse and repeat for 2 hours. It's a super low-pressure, fun way to socialize and meet amazing people.
Yeah, you do not have to be a member of our community or any community. You just have to be your amazing self, open-minded and respectful. Again, you can sign up on our website, normalizingnonmonogamy.com. There's a banner at the top or under the events tab.
And finally, we wanted to remind you all about our favorite way to get tested for STIs. It is stdcheck.com. You also hear us talk about this every week, but it is the service...
That's because sexual health is so important.
Sexual health is so important, yes. And it's the service that Finn and I use. It is discreet and very simple to use. Go over to our website, click on the resources tab. You can use the links there to get $10 off, making a 10-panel test only $129, and you support the podcast. So thank you so much for doing that. And best of all, you get to know your sexual health status.
The last thing we want to tell you all is that we would love to hear from you. So please send us an email, send us a voicemail. Maybe you have feedback for us. Maybe you have a question for us, or maybe you would love to come on the podcast yourself. You do not need to be the founder of the Somatic Institute or a content creator. We want you, any of you who have wonderful stories out there. Actually, all stories are wonderful. That's the thing we've learned about doing this, is every single story is important. So please reach out if you would like to tell your story. We would love to have you on.
And with that, let's go and talk with Celeste.
Welcome to the podcast, Celeste. We're excited to chat today. I know you quite well. I've been through the Somatica program, and I've worked with you in person at the immersion. But Emma doesn't know you very well, so we've got this weird dynamic going on today.
I'm excited to learn more. Welcome.
Yay, thank you. It's so nice to finally meet you, and I'm so excited to be here.
Yeah, we're excited to dig in and to tell your story today. So I don't know, maybe let's just start with having you introduce yourself at whatever level you're comfortable, and we'll figure out where the best place to go from there is.
Great. Well, I'm Celeste Hirschman. I'm one of the co-founders of the Somatica Institute of Sex and Relationship Coaching, and I've had a long and an illustrious journey with relationships. And I know you like to talk about all of the different formats. I feel like I've done many of them. And it's been a really fascinating experience to find out who I am and where I land in this realm of open relating. So I'm excited to just share that. And I think, it might be a little bit of a different take on it than some people have heard before.
Perfect.
Awesome.
That's what we love. We love different. And I think that's the thing we've learned about doing almost 400 of these is there are like no two are the same. And so that's what makes the magic.
Yeah. We'd love for you to start just by taking us back to the beginning of like relating. How did you start doing relationships?
Well, let's see. I started with my mommy and daddy.
Yes. Exactly.
And they were two of the most deeply loving, wonderful, supportive, amazing human beings on the planet, and also a little chaotic. And so my start was full of love and warmth and unconditional love, really, but also full of comings and goings. And I think that impacted my attachment style a lot. And so I did have abandonment trauma, and that kind of made me more anxiously attached. And I think that's really kind of a key to my journey around this kind of open versus monogamous relating, and how I specifically have chosen the format that works best for me. And I think for me, like, trauma empowerment, or sort of understanding where our trauma comes from and how it impacts us, and really claiming this is who I am, and this is how I've healed, and this is what I still am working on, and this is what's shaped my relationship choices. That's a very important part of the story for me.
Yeah. Like,
Mhm.
rather than trying to like fight it tooth and nail to like make it something, just sort of embracing that, obviously figuring out what to do with it, but not trying to like make it go away or fix it necessarily.
Exactly. So when I started having relationships, I think for me, love and fear were very intertwined. And as soon as I would fall in love with someone, I would be terrified that they were going to leave, because I had two of the most loving people in the world leave me at different points in time. So it's like, well, there's no amount of love that proves that people stay. And I think that that sort of internalized message, and this feeling like it was my job somehow to make things last forever, because that's the message that we get from the fairy tale, with one person, and all of that pressure. I think it caused me to do a lot of kind of protective mechanisms throughout the beginnings of my relationship, including preemptively striking and breaking up with people, cheating, because I was afraid of losing one person, so I wanted to always keep one in the lurch, like, to make sure I wouldn't be left high and dry. And those were ways that I was kind of acting out from my trauma and not having any understanding of its impact. But I will say, like, I love the people that I loved, when I was started loving people and falling in love as a teenager. I got really to have some amazing experiences, a few bad ones, but I have to say that overall, I've been lucky to be with really, really loving people. And once I started to realize that I wasn't going to probably be very monogamous, I have been on and off throughout my life, that I was able to start negotiating that with people in an honest way, with lots of different formats,
Yeah.
throughout my history. So that's a little bit of the beginnings, I think.
Yeah. No, I appreciate that. I'm curious, when you started dating and into relationships, and you said you had some really lovely ones even in the early, like in your teenage years, were you navigating those sort of by the traditional standards that we see around us, or were you sort of blazing your own path even at the beginning there?
Well, I think I was still within the monogamous paradigm, because there was like this sort of promise of monogamy and then cheating. So
Hmm.
that's still within the paradigm, right?
Yep.
It's not
Yep.
actually like questioning it. And so, I think once trying to think when open relating started for me, probably the first time I had an honest open relationship was in college. Or maybe right after college. Yeah, I had it because I had come out as bisexual,
Mhm.
when I was 19, and I was in a relationship at that point with a wonderful man, and I said, "Oh, sweetheart, I need to go experiment." And unfortunately, I didn't have the language or the options to do that in relationship with him. So we broke up, and I started dating women. And then once I graduated from college, I started dating a man again, but I told him, look, I'm bisexual, and I want us to be open, at least in the sense that I get to sometimes play with other women, and also we played with other women together. So that was sort of the way that we navigated that, and it was a little bit one sided in the sense that he didn't play with other people together. I mean, he didn't play with other people without me,
Mhm.
that I know of. Although he wasn't the most honest character on the planet. So at that point, I had become much more honest.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I mean, and those are also, right, the early days of just exploring who we are in general, and being in relationships is just one of the many things we're trying to figure out. And if
Yeah.
you're also untangling or figuring out your sexuality, there's just so much happening at that time of life. So yeah.
Yeah,
How
my early 20s, it's like, whoo, who was that wild child, you know?
Well, I actually
Yeah.
love that you say that, because I'm just curious how, like, generally speaking, like, how did it go exploring those first sort of forays into non-monogamy? Was like, how did it go for you two?
We did okay. He was very jealous and anxious about me, and it was so interesting because, like, anytime I would hang out with any friend of mine, male or female, he was, like, sure that we were good. I was like, I'm bisexual, I'm not, like, blind, like
Hmm. Yep.
I mean, there's people that I'm attracted to and people that I'm not attracted to.
Right.
So, I'm not going to just sleep with anyone willy-nilly, but he was very, very anxious and quite possessive. So I think in the sense our relationship didn't go well because I need a lot of, I just love people. And especially then I was an extreme extrovert. And so I needed to be around a lot of people and he was kind of isolating. So I think the non-monogamy piece it was up and down. Like we had some moments where our communication wasn't good and we were just sort of doing it out of, there was still a decent amount of chaos in those early forays, I would say.
Yeah. But it started to pave the way of like, there is a different way to do this rather than cheating.
Completely. Yeah. That was like a big shift for me is to start talking about it openly. And, I feel lucky. I went to UC Santa Cruz. I came out in a place that was really, really supportive. And those kinds of ideas were starting to roam around in those environments, much earlier than I think in a lot of other places.
Yeah.
Yeah, totally. Totally. Well, and I'm curious then where did the journey take you from sort of that first, hey, we're doing this right after college or maybe right at the end of college? Where did you go from there?
Well, after I left him, I actually had an amazing 4-year relationship with a wonderful, wonderful man who was super supportive of my bisexuality, extremely honest. And we did have that kind of little bit double standard open where I could be with other women by myself and we would be with women together. And then at a certain point, I felt very safe and connected with him. And I felt comfortable with him occasionally playing with other women by himself. But in some ways, it was sort of like initiated by me. I'd be like, go play with her. And he'd be like, I want to stay with you. So that definitely made me feel a lot safer knowing that we were very much primary attachment figures. And at that point still, I was pretty anxiously attached. And even though there was no way in which he was leaving me, I couldn't fully take that in at that time.
Sure. Well, I mean, like you said, like you had what you described as like unconditionally loving parents that in different times still you felt abandoned or were abandoned in different ways. And so it's like, I don't know how you ever really get past to a place where you're like, well, there is no guarantee. And
and I have gotten past it. And the way that I did that was I stopped having what I call primary possessive partnership. So I stopped getting into relationships where I was committed to one person and we were trying to make it last forever. And I started to move more into what I am now, which I identify as solo open.
Okay.
So I'm not looking for a primary partnership. And what has happened, so I will say that I did have one securely attached monogamous relationship in my life. And I will say that for me, that was quite healing and wonderful. He had never been with anybody else. And there was something about that made me feel extraordinarily safe. And that was just a big part of my healing journey and my first experience, honestly, of fully secure attachment with anyone.
Yeah.
Including my parents. My sisters, for sure, I have fully secure attachment with. But, in any sort of like romantic or parental relationship where all of that stuff is formed. And so that was an amazing experience. And it was really soothing to my nervous system. And it also made me realize I didn't want to be in a partnership that wasn't soothing and that I could be by myself joyfully and then decide who I wanted to see from that place. And what has happened as a result is just a lot of long-term attachment with really, really wonderful people that I don't feel anxious about.
Yeah. Yeah. I would love to dig into that a little because I think, like, initially hearing it, you could almost hear, I just avoid attachment. But it sounds like it's not that. It's not that I'm avoiding attachment. You're just doing it in a way that seems to really work better for you and your system and your sort of experience.
Exactly. And I think of it more as like orbits. And also sometimes they're sexual relationships and sometimes they move in and out maybe of being sexual. So, I've had people orbit through my life in very close orbit where I see them a lot, a much further orbit. Oh, maybe I see them once every 6 months or a year. But in some way inside of my nervous system now, I love them all. And they're here with me, and I feel safe and securely attached to those people as friends, as lovers, as partners, as just people who I really respect and care about and who I have long-term connection with, and it's been much more sustainable to me than this kind of grasping experience of what I said, what I call primary possessive partnership.
Yeah. Backing up into it sounds like that monogamous relationship you had was really fundamental in this. How did you find yourself getting to that point, I guess? Like, 'cause you were having multiple relationships and it wasn't going super well.
Well, I had like what I call kind of like my final straw relationship where I was really subsuming my needs. We had tried a don't ask, don't tell open.
Mhm.
Actually, I was able to hear his experiences, but I didn't really want to share mine. And that worked really well for me in that relationship because my needs weren't getting met between he and I. And then I was just like, why am I even trying to have this relationship where my needs aren't getting met? And just like doing all of this augmenting that actually doesn't feel really good. And I feel scared and actually don't want him to be with anyone else because he didn't have a very high sex drive. And so I was like, if he's sleeping with someone else, he's sleeping with me one time less a week. And that's not great. So I was just like, I don't need to be in a relationship. That was sort of the conclusion.
Mm.
And after that, I felt this sense of freedom. Like, I'm never going to be in a relationship again unless it meets this extraordinary bar, which I never even expected would happen. And then this person dropped from the sky into my arms, and I got to have this truly phenomenal experience. And like you said, for me, it was really a turning point and it was really healing. And it was for a limited amount of time. We knew it was going to be for a limited amount of time. And in some ways, that made it easier because, again, I didn't have to grasp for some forever. I was just like, I get to have you now and I get to have you all to myself and I get to feel. He was just so emotionally available, like capable, and really like learned quickly because I'm a teacher in this realm. I teach people how to have better intimacy, and he was like a sponge.
Yeah.
So it was a phenomenal experience, and I feel like it did like soothe a lot of that anxiety inside of me.
Yeah.
And then I thought, well, I would never have a relationship again unless it meets this bar, and actually, honestly, don't even expect that to happen.
Yeah.
Which
Yeah.
is fine. Like, people are always so like, "Oh," you know what I mean? Like, "Why? Why aren't you together?" And I'm just like, I am so happy. Like, he's still inside of me as a secure attachment person, even though we're not lovers anymore and we don't have much contact. It's like, it's part of my life, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. How long ago was that relationship approximately?
I'm so bad with time, but I'm thinking like 4 or 5 years somewhere.
Okay.
Some of it was pandemic time.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I wanted some context of like, was this 10, 15 years ago or something like that? So I'm so grateful you had that experience. And to go into it knowing, like you said, maybe there's a comfort here of knowing this isn't forever.
Yeah.
So we can really, well, there might be grief there, but we can really soak it up for what it is today.
Exactly, and it taught me a lot about soaking it up for what it is today, and when I think about love, love is moments, right? And I get to have them all the time.
Yeah. Yeah.
Mhm.
Well, and I don't know the best way to ask this question, but hopefully you get the sort of the gist of it is how do you keep yourself from maybe I don't want to say falling onto the relationship escalator because I totally am on board with the I don't need that primary possessiveness,
Mhm.
but I also know I know myself, and it's so easy to be like, well, this felt amazing and that feels so why not more, and pretty soon you're on this like extra fast escalator to infinity. And I'm curious, how do you keep yourself from like falling onto it? Maybe.
Well, I have to say, like, what I don't feel like doing anymore is kind of mixing my wounds deeply together with someone else's wounds. What I see happen in those for a lot of people is that ends up with a lot of strife and not a lot of moments of love and intimacy.
Yeah.
And for me, that's not what I want. So my experience with these long-term connections is that the passion and the yumminess just lasts forever because you're not trying to put it in a box called a house and put it in a box called a marriage and put it in a box called a
Yep.
it's not the other thing. No, for other people, like I really want people to live their lives exactly the way that they want to. And anybody who comes in to see me as a client, I'm like, what is going to soothe your nervous system? What's going to make you feel the most connected? Whether it's monogamous, open, poly, swinging, solo, asexual, it doesn't matter to me. But for me, this is what keeps me calm and sustained. And so, sometimes I see my brain, like I call it like getting on the white horse and starting to gallop a little bit. And then I'm like, really? Because we know where the end of that story leads. And it ain't pretty. Well, I'm like, I hop off the horse,
Yeah. It's so easy. It's so easy to get on that horse and to be, it makes sense, right?
Well, our
And
whole society says get on the horse.
exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
And almost pathologizes if you don't. There must be something wrong if you're not on the horse.
Oh my God, Finn, that's the thing that happens to me all the time when I tell people how I'm navigating this now. They're like, but don't you want blah, 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 blah? And I'm just like, okay, so what you're saying now, I've just told you I'm just like gloriously happy and I used to be miserable. And so what you're saying to me is, wouldn't you rather go back to being miserable? And my answer is a resounding no.
Yeah. Well, and that's why I was like trying to ask the question a moment ago without it coming across as pathologizing, but truly just because I know there are other people out there who feel this way. And in some ways it's not a feeling that's foreign to me about, right now there's this sort of desire to be in connection with people for whatever works rather than what it's quote unquote supposed to be. We're supposed to be doing this. We're supposed to be doing that versus, well, my life can support this and yours can support that. So why would we try to do this different thing that will destroy us both most likely?
Yes, you're the first person who's ever asked me that question in a way that didn't pathologize. So,
Good job. Good job.
good job.
Yeah. Well, I'm just grateful that you were able to dig into it all because I think it is so that the way I've tried to describe it recently is like I'm open to things growing, but I'm not building. And I don't know if that makes sense. Like I'm okay if something evolves and happens, but I'm not hunting for the next thing to create or to go down a path. It's sort of like what can life support?
I love that because I feel like there is a big difference between growth, just growing together, growing for yourself and growing together with someone else or multiple different people, and building, which is just like we're putting in this structure.
Yeah.
And this structure says this, that, and the other thing, and so I really like the way that you put that.
Mhm.
Yeah. Because I'm open to it too. Like I love deep intimacy and connection. And I'm really good at it. I really love it. And I'm really good at it. And I love sex, and I love connecting emotionally and physically. And I just feel so fortunate that I have found a way to do that that doesn't terrify me.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Would you be open to talking a little bit about what it looks like? 'Cause, like I know we're kind of talking about it sort of big picture, but like on a weekly, monthly, whatever, if you kind of zoom in, like what does deep intimacy look like without the possessive attachment for you? Like what does your relationship ecosystem sort of look like as you move through the world right now?
I want to answer the question about intimacy because I
Yeah.
think that's the more important one for me, is not about the ecosystem, which can shift all the time.
Sure.
But
Yeah.
to me, intimacy is moments. And so when I look deeply in someone's eyes, when we kiss and we feel the connection between us, when we share, for me especially, words or language that affirms how much we care about each other or want each other or are attracted to each other. And when I just feel those like fluttery moments in my heart, when I get that sweet, sweet text, or I feel the arousal throughout my body when I'm just like so excited to be with someone, or I know I'm the anticipation I'm going to see someone. All of those for me are this most delicious moments of intimacy. And I really feel so blessed because I feel like I've gotten more than my share.
Hmm. Yeah, that's amazing. And I think I know I keep coming back to this, like when you describe it that way, those are the things that you hear in most like romance movies, that
Rom-coms.
rom-coms, all of it, that it starts there and they're like, and that's the white knight. That's
Yes.
I've been
The horse. Let's get on the
right.
horse.
And it sounds like for you, it's just, I find it here and then it's okay. I can sort of hold that tightly but loosely. Like I can that person can be important in my life, but I can let them go and they might orbit around in a week, a month, or a year and still mean the same without having to like force it.
Well, that's very perceptive because I do identify as deeply romantic, and it can feel, I think, societally contradictory
Mm-hmm.
to be so deeply romantic and then not want to have this primary possessive partnership. But I've really been able to separate those things out. And for me, again, and I'll always say for me, that's the way that it feels the best. And some people want the whole structure or the commitments or all the things that go along with that in the fairy tale or the, the cultural story around monogamy, and more power to them. Like if that's what they want, I want to help them get that. This is what I want. And I have finally found that place for myself. And it's so relaxing. Like I'm going to tell you right now, when I was in primary possessive partnership, I was probably triggered 75% of my life at least some low level, maybe more.
Yeah.
And now it's like, what? 5%? Mostly not even about relationships, just like, other stuff that comes up in life.
Yeah.
I don't know what you're talking about. This world we're living is not triggering at all. I am.
These days, it might be a much higher number. Good point. But, like.
Yeah.
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 Yeah. I love the way you describe that too. Like a little bit ago, you're like, why would I go back to the time I was miserable? I'm found what works for me. I'm really happy. This is how I do relationship, and why not? And it can still be deeply romantic and intimate and super fun and sexy. And why not?
Yes, why not? And I feel like people, because they're so afraid of their paradigm being threatened or their desires being somehow like denormalized, or I don't know what it is, this fear of like, oh, you being you is going to make it so I can't be me. So they're like, be like me, be like me. And I'm like, let's be different and be together.
Yeah.
And that's for me, like big part of somatica, is this feeling of belonging as opposed to fitting in. When we get to be who we are and we get to be loved and supported and seen and embraced and celebrated by all of these people around us, like in the training, all of the other students, graduates, and we get to be ourselves. And I think that's what people say the most about taking our training. You can speak to it if you want, but it really is about belonging as opposed to trying to be like everyone else in that space.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and I think, these are my own opinions on why people get shamey about this stuff. I think it can be really threatening. If you see somebody doing something different than you, it can be really easy to go, well, I must be doing it wrong. What's wrong with me? Versus being, hey, I'm doing it different. I'm still okay. And you're okay. Like, look at this. We're different and we're both okay. And we can be friends or maybe even lovers or partners or whatever. We can, it's okay. It's okay to be different.
Yeah, completely.
Yeah.
But damn, is it hard to get there for some of us.
And
Not me. I can imagine others.
I'm curious, I'm not exactly sure how to word this question. So we'll see how it comes out. But I'm curious, how have you, your history in pushing against norms, especially around sex and intimacy. How did that start for you?
Well, that's a great question. So I was born to hippie parents in like a kind of a hippie guru culty. So I was already outside of society. I was born outside of a lot of the societal norms. The guru had 8 wives. Remember, I didn't choose this. I don't do cults in any way, shape, or form. But that's where my parents met. And so I came into a space where people they were, in the like I was born in the 70s, but in the 60s and 70s, people were really questioning like the 50s and the structure and the boredom and the like normalization of everybody has to be normal and we're made most happy by our new refrigerators. People were like, wait a minute, we want to create a different world here. We want to create different structures. So I was born into the parts of that movement. The people who were surrounding me were trying to create a different structure. It wasn't one that, a lot like it didn't have great positive impact on a lot of the people who were in it because there was a lot of drugs and those kinds of experimentations that made it harder to be good parents, although my parents were not neglectful at all. But it did say, you get to create your own society. You get to create your own life, and no one can tell you the right way to live. That was the message that I was born into, so that was kind of easier for me but that doesn't mean, that I spent a lot of my time in my life, like feeling like, do I fit in here and can I fit in? But I also, like when I was in junior high and high school, especially high school where there's all these different cliques, I just floated around between all of them because I was like, yeah, I can hang out with the musician stoners and I can hang out with the nerds. I love the nerds and I can hang out with the preppies, maybe not the super cool kids because they always talk behind your back as soon as you walked away. And I didn't really like that idea.
Yeah.
But I was an actress. Like I hung out with all of the different people. And I think that, because there was this deep level of just like be yourself and accept everyone that I was born into, that is, part of my belief system and the way that I've always lived my life.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Which is amazing and also like has to be jarring then when you sort of come out of that into a world where feels like everybody's judging us all the time and heaping that on. I mean, was it jarring to sort of come from the background and into, we'll call it the quote unquote real world?
Yeah, I mean, I guess I've been very sheltered in that sense because, I was born in California. I was born in San Francisco, California. I grew up in Sonoma County. I went to school at UC Santa Cruz. I spent a little time in a cool town in Mexico, and then back here in San Francisco. And so I have, I see the horrible things that are happening in the world right now in terms of especially stuff around queer. My whole family is queer, and it's just destructive what's happening now. But in terms of like where I was situated, I've been very fortunate in the sense that there's a lot of acceptance to be who you are in the place that I have grown up and
like your day-to-day experience, even though maybe it's out there in the media, out there in the greater world, your sort of lived experience was not one that maybe heaped a lot of that onto you.
Yeah, I go down the street to Dolores Park and, there's one person like in a kilt and a dog mask and one person, like two people who are wearing matching outfits and some people walking around the Castro that aren't wearing anything at all. And, it's like,
yeah, it's a different world.
I was going to say, very different than the town we grew up in. So, yes.
Yeah.
A lot of freedom of self-expression here in this state.
Yeah, which is wonderful and also gives you a different lived experience, and I imagine makes it easier to then push against those norms because you're around people pushing those norms almost most of the time.
Yeah, and my whole project in life and work in every area of my life is to support people in being who they really have always meant to be, which means fighting those social messages. It means de-shamifying the things that people feel bad about themselves that are part of themselves, even the trauma, right? Like, it's like we all have these challenging experiences. We have these hurts. We have these imperfect childhoods. And like, then we start categorizing things. Oh, that's healthy and that's unhealthy. And what's wrong with, and you can make anything healthy or unhealthy. I like to joke about like Star Trekking things, I don't know if you watched some of the original Star Trek, but it was always like, what if we just flipped it on its head? So if we look at monogamy and non-monogamy, we live in a world now where everybody thinks monogamy is healthy, right? But if we just flipped it on its head, we could think, okay, let's live in a world that's totally polyamorous. And then they're very judgmental and they're like, who needs to just be possessed and possess one person? Like, what's wrong with you there? Like we could live in that world and it would be just as, like powerful and sort of like hegemonic as the world that we live in right now. Or we can live in a world where we're like, people are different.
Yeah.
People need different things. Like, and that's what I loved about that show. It was always like, what if we just flip this on its head, and they did great stuff around race and, really powerful stuff that just said, like, look at what we're doing here. It doesn't make any sense. Like, why are we judging these people for this reason?
Yeah.
And I think that that's a big piece around like open and poly now, trying to like destigmatize that it's just, like there's been non-monogamy always. And it was like under the table or cheating or acceptable for men, but not women, like
Yeah.
we're not like inherently monogamous. I don't think we're inherently monogamous or non-monogamous. We're social creatures and we have different needs and experiences in that sense.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, and so much of what we think is right and wrong, it's pretty much all made up, right?
Yeah.
And to your point too about, right, there's infidelity, right? That's non-monogamy. And that's actually often more acceptable, right? It's more acceptable to cheat on your partner than it is to have an open, honest conversation and then have an open relationship, right? And it's just so crazy how we make these things up and then they just are, and then we're somehow like feel like shit about living in any other way than we're told. It's just
It is outrageous. And, this hierarchy of sins, right? But also cheating is like thought of as like, if you're in the monogamous paradigm, it's like one of the worst sins that you can ever do. But yet there's no place at the beginning of relationship where people are allowed to be like, so are you mono? Are you poly? Are you open? Are you swinging? Like people are starting to have this, but it's like you get married to someone and there's just this unspoken expectation and you're not supposed to talk about it, like, who am I? And so it's no wonder that like 8 years in, somebody might be like, I thought I could do this, but it's not who I am,
yeah.
And then they're too afraid to ruin the relationship, to tell someone. And so they're like, maybe I can sneak it around the side. And, I don't know, with technology the way it is, it's much harder to have an affair these days.
For sure.
Oh, yeah.
But it brings up an interesting thing that I was curious about is how do you, when you meet somebody new, how do you communicate to them, this is my style, this is what you can expect, and this is how I do it? Like, how do you sort of take the reins on driving that?
I've noticed that, well, I am bisexual, but I date men now, and they don't really care about those conversations. I don't want to make a blanket statement, but I haven't had to have a lot of them. It's just like, okay, we're dating and it's great, and they're not asking me who else I'm seeing, and I'm not asking them who else I'm seeing. And frankly, I don't want to know. And I think the one thing that I do tell people is like, I just want you to, when you're with me, I want to be like the moon and the stars and everything. And even play with possession. I love like your mind and, like even in an erotic sense,
Mhm.
like, but, and when you're not with me, live your life,
Yeah.
Yeah.
enjoy yourself,
Yeah. Yeah. And also pointing out that, again, context of where you live and the people that might already have some of this understanding a little bit easier than, than other places.
When I'm dating younger people, so they're more in the dating mode anyway, like
Mm.
not necessarily looking to be the ones who are, settling down right away or
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, it sounds like there are some conversations early on, at least, of, well, because you can play with, right? Like, I feel like saying something like "you're mine," right, or something like that in the throes of passion. That's like a big statement, right?
Mm.
But to know that when we walk out of the bedroom or whatever room you happen to be in doing this, that it didn't mean that when they go home they're still yours, and when they wake up in the morning they're still yours, and that there is some container around it.
Yeah, and I mean, I was being a little bit subtle, but, it's more like, "That's my pussy."
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Got it.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah, yeah,
Like, yes, it is.
yeah. Yeah, I mean, it's fun to be able to play in it, right? And
Yeah.
to say the things we had somebody on the show a couple of months back. It's Billy Procida from the Man Whore podcast. I'm not sure if you've ever heard of that, but he was talking about an experience he had that was really powerful, where him and this woman started. I think they maybe only went on a date or two, but they were both like, really starved for like love and romance. And so they basically agreed that they were going to, for the night, they were just going to be in like, we're an old married couple. They were going to act like it, talk like it, all the things they were going to say. We're going to mirror this. And then they knew the next morning when they woke up, they were going to go back to their lives. And they had created a container where they could play in the deep love romance without it meaning a whole lot more.
So fun.
Yeah.
I love bringing it to the bedroom, as a form of play and connection, and then realizing that it doesn't have to mean, okay, we're doing the trajectory,
Mhm. Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm curious too, Celeste. It sounds like this seems like I know the answer, but I'm going to ask anyway. It seems like you didn't have a whole lot of friction or resistance when you maybe came out and told people in your family, your friends that you were,
That's what I was going to ask too.
bisexual or exploring these types of relationships. How was that process for you?
My dad picked me up from college when I was 19 years old after my first year in college, and I got in the car and I said, "Dad, I'm bisexual." And he said, "Me too." And then he told his freaking story and made it all about him. I was like, okay, well, that was par for the course for my dad. He liked to talk about himself. My mom was mildly concerned only about any kind of like oppression that I might experience. And once she sort of like got that out of her system, then, she's deeply supportive. And I'm one of 3 bisexual sisters. So we call it the bisexual dynasty. My mom also identifies as bisexual. So we're all bi.
Not a ton of friction, sounds like.
No
friction.
Amazing. Wow.
And how about from a relational standpoint?
I feel like it's pretty acceptable to be a bisexual woman. Like I've almost never had anyone have any, probably like the worst thing that happens is like, oh, are we going to have a threesome? Like this kind of expectation that might come along with it. But aside from that, I haven't had any. I've had some biphobia from women, and assumptions when I was dating primarily women that I was lesbian. And so when I would hang out with a group of women who were lesbian, and again, remember, this was back in the day in Santa Cruz, so pretty old school vibe, and they would talk about bisexuals badly. That's probably like some of the worst biphobia that I've experienced because they just assumed I was gay because I was in a relationship with a woman at that time.
Yeah. Sort of the erasure, there is no bisexuality. You're just on the stop, on the way to, yeah.
Yep. But here I am, still bisexual after all of these years. So
still waiting for that other shoe to drop.
Yeah.
Still sitting on that fence, and boy, is my ass hurting.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I have a couple other questions, but maybe let's take a moment. I'd love to just jump in and talk a little bit about, I know you've woven a little bit work, Somatica and the work you're doing, and maybe just to plug that a little bit and talk a little bit about what that looks like and how you created it.
Yeah. I'm curious about that too.
Yeah, so I met Danielle many years ago now. I think it's been about 20 years, and we've co-created the method. And it was really organic and kind of step by step as we saw what our clients were needing. We did our degrees and all those studies and everything, but as we saw what our clients were needing around intimacy and erotic and emotional connection, we created all sorts of experiential practices to help people practice those things in real time. And then we created a whole method out of those experiential practices. So it's not just talking or philosophizing, it's actually practicing in real time with authentic relating, both emotional and erotic, within boundaries. And we have a whole training. We teach and train coaches and certify them in the method. And then we also just rolled out a whole set of classes on learn.somatica.com for people who just maybe want to learn about dating or learn about touch or learn about what turns them on and how to make that happen in their lives. Or, we have different like bundles, relationship refresh and stuff like that. So there's a lot of different ways that people can learn from us, including going to sexcoaching.com and finding a sex coach.
Mm-hmm. And I'm curious for anyone, so anyone listening, they're like, I have no idea what somatica is. How would you describe it?
Yeah. So Somatica is a form of sex and relationship coaching that uses experiential practices and mutual vulnerability to help people learn the best tools of emotional and erotic intimacy. So it's really a practical experiential approach. So for example, I think it's always good to have an example. If I'm sitting here with you two and you're my clients,
Mhm.
I might say, well, let's practice with a little bit of a passion exercise. I'm going to teach you something called up against the wall. And, and I want to check in first, like, can I demonstrate it on one of you? Are you open to that or is that comfortable for you? And which one of you would like
Mhm.
me to throw them up against the wall? And then you would talk amongst yourselves and decide, I don't know, which if it
Yeah.
was the two of you, who would get thrown?
Ooh.
I mean, I would go first because I've done this before. I've been thrown before.
Okay.
You've gone through the training. I haven't. I was like, but I think that's
So maybe you should go
I was
first.
exactly. I think that's the reasoning for me to go first.
All right, Emma's going first.
No, so maybe I would throw you up against the wall, Emma, and then, Finn, you would practice throwing her up against the wall, or maybe you like to be thrown up against the wall, and she would practice throwing you up against the wall. So we would actually, and when I say that, it's like, I put that in quotation marks, throwing up against the wall. It's not a violent experience, it's a passionate experience. So it's like, it's both like intensely, like there's grabbing, but there's also like light touch and eye contact and like really like holding and supporting somebody's body. And these are tools that people don't learn in their day to day. Like, how do you really seduce somebody? How do you attune to them? How do you connect and find out what really turns them on? That's what Somatica is all about, both in the emotional and the sexual realm.
Yeah.
Yeah. I love it.
Yeah, I would just say, I mean, personally for me, the thing in that I know I took away from the going through the program more than anything was honestly it expanded my tolerance for sitting in other people's pain, sitting with people. I've been a person who, if somebody like, and I can feel it, like I can walk into a room and be like, somebody's hurting, let me go fix their shit. And now I can be like, somebody's hurting, let me just go sit with them and not fix their shit. And holy cow, is that amazing when you do that? And then people are just like, wow, this was really amazing. Thanks for helping. And I'm like, I did nothing. I literally sat here and did nothing, but you are welcome.
You
So
must have so much more energy in your life now that you don't have to fix everybody else.
I'm working on it. There's a backlog. There's a backlog. You do it the quote unquote wrong way for 20 plus years, and you got some undoing to do. But yeah, I think that experiential part is, and I tell people this all the time, whether you go through a program like this or not, empathy and attunement, sitting with people, that is sure, maybe there's some element of that you can be born with and is natural, but you can learn it and you can practice it and you can
Mhm.
practice the hell out of it. And it's hard, but I feel like for myself, that's been the biggest shift in my life, has been able to just, I mean, even in our own relationship, to not fix every little thing that Emma comes in the door with. And I'm like, I was Mr. Fix It 24 hours a day. And now we don't do it that way. Most
How's that for you, Emma?
Ah, um,
If you don't mind saying, it's up to you.
yeah, no, I know. I'm like, this could go a long way. Okay. Yeah, I think that it's been really helpful to navigate a relationship in a different way that way. Like to be able to sit with each other in each other's pain and hurt and not try to fix it has been a really wonderful change in a
Mm,
relationship. At the same time he went through Somatica program, I've been in a school for a psychology program. So I've been practicing a lot of the same things, just in a different way.
yeah,
And so we've both been practicing these skills, and they've been really helpful for sure.
that's
Yeah.
so wonderful to hear.
Yeah.
Yeah, I feel like if I hadn't created Somatica, I actually wouldn't be where I am today either, because every time I teach it, it reminds me to do it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I'm
Yeah.
curious too, Celeste, as you take yourself into the world of dating and relationships and romance, it's almost like I don't know, the analogy sometimes that comes to mind would be like a pro basketball player going down to like the YMCA trying to ball with the kiddos. And I'm curious, like, how is it for you when you step out into the world and you're like, whoa, you know?
I have the most hilarious story about that. I went on a date with a much younger man, and he's like, "Yeah, well, I think I can teach you some things, right?" And I was like, "Oh, really?" So he comes over to my house for the first time, and I don't even know what he was doing. He starts crawling all over me, and then like within 3 minutes, he's clothed, but like his crotch is kind of in my face, and I just I sat him down next to me, and I was like, "What did you think you were going to teach me?" And he goes, I know. It was like me walking up to LeBron James on a basketball court and telling him I was going to teach him something. And I'm like, yeah, okay, so let's start from scratch, And what I ended up teaching him, he realized that he'd never given a woman an orgasm. That the one time a partner of his had actually orgasmed was because she did it herself while he was also giving her some stimulation. And so I taught him how to do it with his hand and my toy. And he really got like the G spot. He got a good G spot lesson. And then I was like, okay, well, I'm done. And then he went home without an orgasm. And I was like, now you kind of feel like every woman that you ever slept. I'm sorry, but like it was a little bit harsh, but I felt like it was such an important lesson, and I'm generally very gentle. And I actually was very sweet and gentle with him. And, we had a good time after that. But I did feel like there was a really important learning piece that needed to happen. And I think, I do tell partners that generally, if they hang out with me, they'll probably grow, and at least I do share, if something needs to be repaired, I share my feelings and I teach them how to listen to my feelings in a way they can do that within their capacity. And I just change my expectations based on their capacity. Some people are deeply emotionally capable of learning and growing, and some people just aren't. And that's okay. It just means I can have a different kind of relationship with them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I love that reframe. Just like everybody is at their own stage of growth and life and journey. And sometimes we have more capacity for change in our own self-growth and other times we don't. And that's okay. But then you can choose, we can each choose how we're in relationship with other people and what we're needing. And that's not often talked about. So
Yeah, for sure.
yeah.
Well, I also love that it's, because it could be similar back to the analogy of the basketball, right? It could, I feel like you could easily find yourself in a world where you're like, well, I can never play basketball anymore because nobody's quote unquote good enough to play. But it sounds like for you, it's much more about, can you show up with the main tool of emotional capacity to navigate this? It's not about being this tall to ride the ride and this good at giving orgasms. It's about being in the experience of it.
Well, I will say it is about being this good at giving orgasms.
Okay.
But I will say that I am pretty easy to give orgasms to, and that I can teach people pretty easily how to do that. If they can't do that, then it's not of much interest to me,
Mm-hmm.
because all the other work for me is for that.
Sure. And so maybe I reduced it too far, but the willingness to learn, right? They don't have to show up necessarily and know how to do it on date one,
Yeah.
but can they drop in and have enough humility to say, okay, let me learn you and your body and pleasure with you rather than I'm going to teach you, right?
Yeah, for sure. There has to be. And a lot of times I don't need to teach much because, like I said, like I'm pretty flexible in terms of, my ability to orgasm.
Mm-hmm.
But I do, like my toy is essential. She comes with me always. And so if people have some sort of issue around that, that's that's a no
Yep.
go.
Yep.
Most people don't, and I think man's best friend, like it's just so much easier. My best friend too. If I'm gonna have sex with a woman, it's like, why would you like wash your clothing with like a washboard? When there's actual automatic washing machines out there.
Yeah. It's I think the analogy I remember hearing is Dan Savage talking about, like, when you build a house by hand, you still use a hammer, right? You don't pound the nails in with your palm, so it's okay. Bring it.
And men love tools. I don't understand why this is the one place where they're not like, here's my tool belt, baby.
Right. You should show up with a whole bag.
Yeah, I just like to bring a tool belt full of all these vibrators and dildos and toys. Like,
Yes, butt plugs and floggers and just
yes,
butt cheeks hanging out in the back. That would be perfect.
that would be amazing.
Someday. We're on the path. We're on the path. I love it. I love it. Well, this has been wonderful. It's been lovely to chat, Celeste. And again, I know we know each other for a while, but we don't get to talk on this level through the program. So it's been fun for me to get to know you a little bit differently, and for having you on today.
Yeah, it's been really great for me to get to know you too.
Well, I think this is maybe one of the two most vulnerable, I mean, it wasn't emotional, but it was vulnerable for me to share at this level. So I felt really safe and comfortable with you. And yeah, it felt good to tell my story in this way.
Well, thank you. And I'm glad you felt safe and that you did, because it is vulnerable to talk about this stuff. So
it definitely is.
Is there anything else that we haven't asked about or brought up that you did want to share out into the world while you got the microphone?
If it's someone's calling to do this work and be a sex and relationship coach in this really de-shamifying and celebratory and belonging kind of way, I would love for people to check out somaticainstitute.com. And, I love to talk to people on the phone about it. And there's Q&A intros. So I'll send you that over when we,
totally.
when you post it, so that you can let people know about that.
Yeah, links to everything you've talked about today will be in the show notes for everybody. And I'm going to throw an extra plug in there to say, even if you never want to coach a person in your life, if you go through this program or elements of it, like, again, I'm not doing the coaching myself at the moment, maybe someday, but what I've learned and taken away from myself has changed my life. So I just, even on a personal standpoint, even if you're not doing it to share it with other people, you can do it for yourself, and it will most likely have a huge impact. So,
and it has a huge impact on life and relationships.
Yes.
That makes me feel so good to hear. Thank you.
Yeah. Well, thank you, Celeste, for coming on and sharing and all of the amazing work you do.
Yes. Have a wonderful rest of your day, and can't wait for next time.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me.
And we're back. Thank you so much, Celeste, for coming on and sharing your story, and for the amazing work that you're putting out there as well. A quick reminder, you can find links to the Somatica Institute, as well as the links for $20 off some of their online courses over in the podcast show notes at normalizingnonmonogamy.com.
Yes, and you'll also see pictures of Celeste and links to everything else Somatica has going on, and actually all of our guests from the last 7 years.
Just click on the podcast tab.
And really quick, thank you as well from my side, Celeste. It was wonderful to have you on. Thank you for sharing your story.
And we wanted to share just a couple of upcoming date reminders for all of you. The first is upcoming on tomorrow. That is May 8th.
Upcoming on tomorrow.
I was going to go further in the future, and then I realized it's tomorrow.
No, 24 hours.
Tomorrow, May 8th, is our next community virtual workshop. It's going to be Befriending Jealousy with Jolie Hamilton. You can find out more at the community tab of our website. Then we have...
Real quick. In case you didn't know, these community workshops are actually included in our community membership for only $8 a month. So that's a hell of a steal to have a Jolie Hamilton workshop.
Yes.
Right in your face.
Yes.
So come check it out.
If you're listening to this and you're like, darn, it's past May 8th, well, you can get recordings if you join the community.
That's right. And you can get the next workshop.
Yes.
All right.
Next up, our next virtual speed friending event is going to be May 16th. Mark your calendars. Come join us then. And we're also going to be at the Bonobo Retreat, May 23rd to the 26th, and Soul Play, June 12th to the 15th, 2025. Links to all of that are in the podcast show notes. Go find it. Reach out to us if you have any questions. We would love to have you join us at all of these events.
Apparently, we're going to be pretty fucking busy.
Well, yes.
Because we also have our community retreat coming up in October.
In October? We got a few months till that.
Well, yeah, but I can start stressing now. The earlier you start to have anxiety, the more prepared you are for the event.
I don't know about that.
Well, we have different approaches to time.
Next week, we have a lovely interview with Princess. Princess was previously on the episode with her partner Dee Dee back in episode 322. Go back and listen if you want to. and we'd love to have you come back next week and listen to her update.
Another conversation full of laughter.
Yes.
All right. We'll see you all in a week. And until then, we hope you all take care of each other. Actually, we hope to see you tomorrow at our workshop.
Yes.
But we hope you take care of each other and have a lovely week.
Bye, everyone. Thanks for listening.